My name's Sam and this is The Little Greenhouse Creates. Thank you for joining me today. This is our final card for the stamp set of the week, Coneflower Celebrations. Before I start, I must apologise. I seem to still have my sore throat, excuse me, and chest infection, so I've got myself a hot drink. And hopefully that will help me get through the video. So today is our funky fold day and we are working on a tent fold. So it opens by this little flap here. I first saw this card done about 3 years ago. I think it was a Connie Stewart video, but I'm not sure. But if it's not, I apologise, but I'm sure it was one by her. And I call it a tent fold card. So this is the card we are going to create. So let's bring in our supplies. So the first thing I've got, put my scraps down. There we go. And then my scraps. Okay, so, and that's a bit of scrap as well. So I have a piece of, this is Blackberry Bliss. Now this measures, this measures 5 inches by 5 3/4, and I've scored it at the 4-inch mark, so it folds over like so. Then I have another piece of the Blackberry Bliss, and this measures 3 inches by 3 7/8. Then I have my designer series paper. The first piece I have is 3/4 of an inch by 5 1/2 inches, and that goes across the top. Just a note, just be aware of the way your designer series paper goes, so that if it is a directional one, you've got it going the right direction, because obviously you will need the papers to also be in the right direction, so it might need cutting slightly different. These two pieces measure 2 3/4 by 5 3/8, and as I say, I've got 2 pieces. The last piece I have here is a inside measurement card of 3 3/4 by 5 1/2, and then I have a sentiment strip which is 1/2 inch by 2 3/4, which we might cut down later on. So the first thing I want to do is to do the stamping. So let's move these pieces aside. I have got some extra scrap pieces. So this is Timid Tiger. I've got Blackberry Bliss, Shy, Summer Splash, apologies, and this is Petunia Pop, and these are for creating the flower. Right, so I'm going to do my, excuse me, I'm going to do my stamping first. So I have got the sentiment, and that basically says celebrating you, and I'm going to stamp that in Blackberry Bliss. Now this strip is, so say 1/2 inch by 2 3/4. What I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to stamp it far over to the right as possible. There we go. Because if need be, I can cut it off at that end. Now that's that piece. I've then got my white card inside layer, and I'm going to stamp up a butterfly, and I'm going to pop it down to the bottom right hand corner of the piece of paper so that it shows when the card is open and closed. There we go. Let's close that one. And then last but not by any means least, we're going to bring in our cornflower. So that's the head of the cornflower, and I'm going to stamp that in Timid Tiger. So yeah, and I stamp it up. Lovely. I'm going to bring it to the bottom of my paper. Hold it for a couple of seconds to sink through, and then we've got this beautiful colour. And then I'm going to bring in my die. Excuse me. And as I said before, this is even though it looks like it's the same, it is a different shape. The bottom is a different shape, so you will need to check. So this bit doesn't match up, so you'll need to turn it round, and then you'll see it matches up perfectly. And then you just hold it down with a piece of washi tape where you can pop it through the cut and emboss machine. As well as that, you're going to do, let's bring in my pieces, cut them. You've got Blackberry Bliss for the top of the flower. So we're going to do Blackberry Bliss for this piece. And I've got this, which is this piece here. And I'm going to cut that in the pop of petunia. And then with my summer splash, I am going to pop my stem, my full leaf, and my veins of the leaf. I'm going to run those through the, as I say, the cut and emboss machine, and then they will all come back looking like, she says, if she can pick them up. So there's our main flower, there's our leaves, and our petals and head of the flower. I'm going to pop those aside while we create the card, and then we'll come back to putting the flowers together. There we go. Right, so the first thing we need to do is to stick down our designer series paper. Now this paper is part of the Florals in Bloom. I will link this into the dies, no, not the dies, I will do those as well, the paper into my supplies list. So if you pop over to YouTube or onto my website, you can click on the supplies list for this particular card and you'll see everything that I've used to create this card. So the next thing to do now is to pop our inside layer down. So I'm just going to use my stamp and seal for this. Okay, that sticks down like so. There we go. So the next thing to do is to add our tent section. Now you don't want it as far over to the right, well you could do, but I'm aiming for it to have a gap either side. So I'm looking at it probably, I suppose that's about an inch. Yeah, about an inch away from the left-hand side. I'm measuring up the bottom of my piece of card to the bottom of the back. And then I'm just going to add 2 strips of my stamp and seal. Once again, making sure that is lined up. Actually, before I do that, hold that thought. I need to put my designer series paper on. Right, let's do that again. Otherwise, we'll cause issues. So, I'm going to stick our double-sided sticky bit there. Okay, now we can add our piece to the edges. Again, we will put the double-sided onto there. This can come down and hold it in place. So now you've got your tent fold. Then what we're going to do is we're going to use the other piece of designer series paper and pop that on in the inside. Let's do that now. 1, 2, 3. Don't have to use stamp and seal. Any glue that you find works for you is best. But for quickness, I like to use the stamp and seal. So that's the basics of the card. I just need to colour in my butterfly. So the colours I've got, this is the Dark Summer Splash, which I'm just going to use for head and body. And then I'm going to use the colours that I've got in the flower to pick them up in the butterfly. So let's have a look, see what we've got. Let's go for the dark Timid Tiger. And I'm just going to unusually colour all this in while the video is running. Right, in fact, I'm going to put this on hold and I'll come back once I've finished. So I've finished colouring in my butterfly. So as before, I've used the Timid Tiger, and I've also finished the butterfly off in the Petunia Pop light and dark, and then I've obviously used the green to pick up the Summer Splash from the flower. Okay, so now we can pop our flower together. So I'm going to overlap this part onto the actual flower. I'm just going to do the body rather than the actual petals, the head rather than the petals. That fits onto the top there. Give it a little rig around. There we go. Now I'm going to stick the flower head on. Not too much glue because these little bits are all lifting and the glue will seep through. So I've got to be very careful. Mind you, if you've got a glue rubber, you can always rub off the bits of glue that sticks out. So that's my head. And now I'm going to put the leaf together. So, and I'm just going to dot my glue around the leaf. That's better, right? There we go. So that goes down there, over there. There we are. And that fits onto there, like so. So we've got our 3 parts. Now, before we actually put the flower on, the best thing to do is to work out where our sentiment's going to go. So I'm thinking my flower will go roughly there, which means that the sentiment can go there. So the question is, do I cut that piece off? I think I will. So let's do that with my trimmer. So this now has become probably 1 7/8. There we go. If you wanted to, you could put Happy Birthday in the middle here, but obviously make sure it just covers this area so that when it comes down, it doesn't show through and you can lift it up and show it. But otherwise, I'm going to put Celebrating You just there. And I think I'm going to... I was just trying to work out whether I should do dimensionals or no. I'm just going to glue it just to be on the safe side. I think too much dimension would make this very heavy for posting, because the flower has got layers on it, is actually quite big and bulky. There we go. Pop that there. Now you can pop your flower head on. So that works well. So again, I'm just going to glue the top here. And I'm just going to make sure that it's, there we are, perfect. Hold it for a couple of seconds, then you've got no glue showing through. Now we have our stem. Now the best thing for stem wise is to work out where you want your stem to go. So I probably want about 1 inch cut off. Let's grab my scissors. Let's do that. And then you can run your glue down your stem, poke the pointy part that you've just cut off up the flower, And you can make sure that it comes down and meets the end, probably of the designer series paper rather than the actual. There we go, that's better. There we go. And then I'm going to add my leaf here. Let's see, just move it around a bit. There we go. Or am I going to add the leaf that way? I think that might be better actually. Yeah, so I'm going to just add the glue down this edge. There we go. It's going to sit on there like that. Hold that for a couple of seconds. Okay, now the only other thing to do, which I was contemplating to do with this one, and I think I might, is bring in a pointed tool. So I'm going to grab some bling. Bear with me for a second. I'm going to get, let's have a look and see what I've got. These are the ones I wanted to use for here. So these are the 25 to 27 in colour flat pearls. And I'm going to use these because this is the colour. So this is the cloud cover. I'm going to pop one there. And then one either side. Two. And 3. Yeah, I quite like that. And then I'm going to do the same on this one. Let's put that aside for a second. See what I can put on here. So I have got, no, actually I might put just the plain pearls if I can find them. There we go. So we've got these pearls. So these are the antique pearls. And I think this time I'm just going to put, do them in size. So I've got large, medium, and then a small one. Just there. And there we go. They are our funky fold cards or tent folds for this week's stamp set of the week, Coneflower Celebrations. So thank you ever so much for joining me this week. I hope you enjoyed these cards as much as I enjoyed creating them. We'll be back again next week for our next stamp set. So do join me then. But whatever you do, have a lovely weekend and I hope to catch up with you soon. Bye.